Hey everybody, welcome back. Look how pretty the colors are of this woman that's sitting in the room with me. Just beautiful. I'm like a black and white guy. Look, my book is black and white. My shirt's black. The wall's white. And so when I see somebody with these pinks and lavenders and beautiful things behind them, I think, wow, like I wish I could be that person sometimes, but I'm not. I'm black and white. I see the world black and white. My wife tells me but I dress black and white. I hope I don't see the world quite black and white, but maybe that's why I'm doing the show, to stop seeing the world so black and white, to see other people's opinions, to meet people that I don't know. What I love about the show, and I say it a lot, but I'll say it again, is it is an opportunity for two people who don't know each other. I didn't even know that Marti Murphy existed a week ago. What I do know about her is I had a conversation with another stranger by the name of Ruth, and Ruth was said, "Can I please introduce you to Marti?" And I said, "Oh, of course you can." And so I do know that she's a friend of Ruth, and I won't hold that against her. No, I'm teasing. Ruth was a fabulous interview, and I loved just talking to her. And so I'm eager to see what Marti has. I'm eager to see if I can figure out or not figure out why Ruth wanted us to meet. And all of that put aside, I'm just happy to have a conversation with someone in a delicious color of pink. So, Marti, without further ado, I'm going to welcome you into 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. How are you today?
I'm great, and thanks. I really appreciate being here. It's fun to sort of have this spontaneous conversation.
Yeah. Where are you located in the world?
I'm in a town called Placitas, New Mexico.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's between Santa Fe, or Fontaine, as we like to call it, and Albuquerque. And we're at the north end of the Sandia Mountains. So my view right out there is the north end of the Sandias. And we have wild horses here. And I just saw a live bobcat yesterday morning.
Oh,
So
wow.
we have a lot of wildlife, and
Wow.
we're a little bit out in the sticks, but I love that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Since I don't know you, and people maybe that are listening, maybe people know you, I don't know. Stranger things have happened, and people that I don't know meeting people that I don't know. But for the listening audience, will you take a moment and tell us who you are and what's important to you?
Yeah, so I became what I call an emotional fitness coach about 10 years ago after a 35-year stint in corporate America, specifically corporate sales. And I also started studying EFT tapping. And basically, I came to tapping because I honestly was sick and tired of my own BS, and that's the way I would say it. And I had reached a point where I was so feeling so stuck in my life for so long. I will say it this way: I literally put an intention out to the universe, God. I always say Fred Flintstone, the dinosaurs, whatever you want to call it, the great spirit. If there's something that can truly finally help me change my life, then send it my way. And if not, I just want peace. And shortly after that, I found EFT. It's kind of, we'd call it magical the way I happened upon it. And I just started doing it for myself. And I genuinely started noticing changes. And the big plug was my husband. About 2 to 3 months into it, he goes, I don't know what it is, but there's something different about you.
Hmm.
And it really, I really started it for myself. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, if I could help anyone else that ever felt as stuck as I have, I would want to do that. So then the business that I have now is sort of born out of that. And I was moonlighting, doing that at night and on weekends while I was still doing my corporate job. And I wanted to add this. I had this thought in my head like, God, I wasted like 35 years of my life in corporate sales. And then I realized, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I used to always feel like I was a therapist when I was out calling on people, because for some reason they always really opened up to me. So I got a huge education, and
Yeah.
that really helped me in this world. So that's really a bit about me.
So, the biggest question I might ask you today comes as a surprise to me. But when EFT came to you, did you hear a yabba dabba doo from Fred Flintstone? No.
No, I didn't, but that would have been funny if I had. He always just pops in like yabba dabba doo. That'd be great.
Yeah, but that would do it. There are probably some millennials that don't even know what we're talking
Right,
about. But
like,
right, but what the heck are they talking about?
right,
Um, I love that something comes out of something, and we don't really understand it. It doesn't really make sense. We just had somebody send us something called the Heli. Are you familiar with what the Heli is?
mm-mm, not at all.
So this is a new sort of interesting device.
Oh wow.
It's about half the size of your phone, and it works on frequencies. And programmed into this device are 120 different things that it works on. And you don't have you either electrodes that you can put in, but the one that we got, you don't even need it. You can do it from a distance. And I believe in that type of stuff, but there's so many things that have come and gone that I don't believe in. That when
Right,
the woman talked to me about it, I said, "Oh, come on!" It's just, and I didn't like her. I didn't really like the way. I mean, she was spacey, and she was irresponsible, and like everything led up to me not believing it would ever do anything for me.
right, sure.
And she said, "Well, look, we're talking a lot. Why don't you just like, I know you don't like me, but let's just forget about whether you like me or not. Let's just see if the thing works." And she was 250 miles away.
Mm.
And we had it work on my knees because I have bone to bone arthritis.
Oh wow.
And because we had talked so much, we didn't have time to run a full session. So she said, "I'm only going to do 26 minutes and let's just see what happens. And then I'll do another 26 minutes because you haven't been sleeping well. So I'll do another 26 minutes on sleep." For about 2 weeks after she did that, I had no pain in my knees.
Wow.
And I was sleeping uninterrupted that I haven't slept in a long time like that. And so there is this new medicine that's coming to us. There is this works on frequency and energy, and I just believe that that's something that's happening. And so I love when that happens. What do you think it takes for someone to believe something that they don't know why they believe in it?
Well, the first word that pops in my head, honestly, is results.
Results.
It's funny. I'm from the show me state,
Yeah.
Missouri. Originally grew up in St. Louis, and it's like I'm actually what I would call spiritually pragmatic. So I'm like, well, let me try it, and if it works, then I'll move forward with it. And
Yeah.
that's what I notice is people can talk a good game, but if somebody doesn't get the results that they want, then like you
Yeah.
said, you're like I didn't really care for her, but I tried it, and oh my god,
Yeah. Amazing, right?
yeah.
Marty, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? The animals. I have three cats, three dogs.
Wow.
I am an animal lover. I always have been, even as a kid. I always migrated to animals. I live in a space. We have wild horses around. I love seeing them. We have this little herd of four. There's about 160 in the town that I live in, and they're around the hills. But we have this little herd of four that hangs out around here. I saw the bobcat yesterday. I have little quail that run up and eat the bird seed. And I literally, when I first moved here, there was a woman that posted on one of those neighborhood apps. I don't get anything done. Like I stare out the window all the time. And I thought, oh my God, I don't do that, but I could.
Yeah.
And, and I literally could. Literally, I just have such a love of animals, and they're so endearing, and like cats, I know people have sometimes kind of an attitude about them. Ours are hilarious. And they literally, just by being who they are, all our animals crack me up. And that literally makes me happy.
Wow. Love it. If money weren't important, what would you do?
Actually, I really would be doing what I'm doing now.
Don't you love when you can say that?
Yeah, and I would have never said that when I was in corporate, but I definitely feel like, oh no, I love what I do now. Yeah,
Where were you when you were in corporate? Were you still in New Mexico or did you
I
just move
was.
from?
Yeah, I grew up in St. Louis, started in corporate America there, moved to Chicago, was there for 7 years, and then moved out here in 1993. And I've been in the corporate path for a long time. My husband and I had a little, like a route sales business for about a year and a half when we lived here. So, but it was always sort of sales, and what I would say is sales is relationship building. That's how I see it. It's not about, oh, close the sale. I could never stand that when I was in that world. I'm like, no, that's not me.
What made you agree to come into this room?
This room right now with you?
Yeah.
Ruth. Ruth really, she was like, spoke highly of you, and she just said, hey, you gotta meet this guy. And I was really, and I love Ruth and I trust her. So I was like, yeah, why not?
Fabulous.
So
Fabulous. Is it something you tend to do? Do you tend to meet strangers? Do you talk to strangers? Do you?
it's interesting. My daughter once said to me, Mom, you'll talk to like a doormat. And it's interesting because, believe it or not, when I say that, I'm actually a bit of an introvert, but I heard this term, I'm what's called a compensating introvert. So I love being around people. My husband and I actually do Airbnb out of our house. And
Oh,
why
wow.
is I have friends that are like, wait a minute, you let perfect freaking strangers stay in your house? And I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
because we have met the coolest people through that. And that's what I love about it is I just get to meet people from everywhere. Then I get to go to my space and have my time to myself. But I love meeting. I love.
What's the most interesting thing that's happened to you as a result of meeting somebody through your B&B?
Oh, we met a concert pianist who is on Wikipedia. He was supposed to play for the Pope, young guy, amazing, amazing young man. Then COVID hit and he couldn't go do that. And he was here one night and we had another gal here. My husband was out of town and I pulled him up on YouTube and I'm like, hey, I've got a concert ready to go. And he's like all embarrassed and like, oh my God. And he was so unassuming. And I would say he's quite famous in his realm. Like
Yeah.
I would most people probably wouldn't know who he is, but in that world they would. And I was like, oh my God, it was just so neat to meet this young man who was so unassuming. And, I was playing his YouTubes and he was like, I can't watch myself. But
Right. Right.
that was really, really fun. He was a delight.
Most people ask this question and we skip over it pretty quickly by saying great, fine. We might have even done that ourselves when we just met right now.
Oh yeah, sure.
Um, Given the space that I really care with all the stuff that's going on, we're just on the heels of a Me Too movement. We have a pandemic that is going on that's changing all of our lives. And even though it hasn't changed your life that much because you work at home, it still changes your life.
Oh yeah.
Um, we have race protests and people wanting to stand up and say, I want to be heard. It's time. How long will this go on? Um, and Sadly, I was a part of those same movements in the 70s. And the language hasn't changed. It's Black Life Matters. Then it was the Black Panthers. But much of what we're saying is not that different. But it's a little bit different to give us some credit. How are you doing with all that, really?
Well, that's a great question. So when COVID hit, I actually was in a really upbeat like place about it. I have a belief about disease and viruses and stuff. So I've never been afraid of getting that myself. I heard it really best said by this internal medical doctor. It's an upgrade to our system.
Yeah.
And I believe that. And I don't expect anybody else to believe that. So I was like, well, I'm 58. If I get it, I'm considered at risk. But I'm like, well, you got to take health and stuff into account. So that actually was not really a big deal for me. And I'm not around people that are highly at risk. And I live out in the country. But the Black Lives Matter and all that was definitely more of an emotional impact on me. And I would say it for this reason. Growing up, I literally got my, ancestry.com. I'm like about as white can be. Like I literally was genuinely disappointed. I'm like, oh my God, don't I have like some other
Right.
interesting culture? And what I awakened to myself, I would never call myself racist, but what I've really woken up to is growing up as a white person in the United States and in our culture, there have just been things that I would say I've been ignorant to, not because I intend to, but because of programming
Yeah.
that I had growing up, and growing up as a white person in the United States and not really realizing what it might be like for a black person or an indigenous person or anyone else. And I feel like that's been really good. It's also at times been really emotional. And but and even though I would like to add this, that I know it happened back then. I follow a bit of astrology only because I would see patterns repeat when I was working
Yeah.
with clients. And my understanding of what's happening in the United States right now, I don't expect anybody to believe in astrology. It hasn't happened since 1776.
Wow.
So literally what's happening is whatever needs to go away will go. And then whatever needs to replace it will replace it, which is different than in the 70s. And I am genuinely hopeful. And I would even say, even though we're seeing a lot of unrest and all that, I truly believe this go round, it's the beginning of real shift and change, where
Yeah.
at least, because in the United States, we will, out of forcing or whatever, see things in a new way, and really create a space for this diverse culture that we live in to have a voice and come together as people that live in the same country as human beings, rather than, with such separateness. But
Yeah.
I also think sometimes can look messy and kind of look a little ugly before it comes back together. And that's sort of what I feel like the phase that we're in right now.
Yeah. And that makes sense because if you remodel a house, there's certain periods of time where it doesn't look beautiful,
Exactly.
but you're remodeling the house and you're rebuilding the structures and you're doing that. You slipped past something that I just wanted to go back and see if you wanted to unpack for me.
Absolutely.
You said there have been times where it's been highly emotional. What
Yeah.
was emotional about it?
What was emotional was well, I'll tell you a story. I reached out to a black woman who I'm connected to. I don't really, it's funny, she's like a Facebook friend, and I didn't really know how we came together. And I reached out to her to really sort of have a conversation with her. And I would say probably the way I asked her wasn't really well received. So it was, what came back at me was like, whoa. And I really went into this place of like, wow, is that inappropriate? And sort of waking, and I would tell you, I don't think that I did anything wrong.
Right.
It would say maybe through some sort of ignorance and programming, maybe the way I asked it. But I thought, no, and I really had, that was emotional for me because I thought I had good intentions. I really did. But I really had to tap through that and work through that to go, no, my intentions were good and it wasn't received so well. And yet so many other people have just been so amazing and so well receiving. So I've had times like that was hard and that was emotional because I went into sort of, I would say, first judgment of self. Like
Hmm.
my little kid got activated and like, oh, did I do something wrong? And then I was like, I really took stock and like, no, I know my intention was good. And, you know, um, and to go with that, and in that way to help me wake up a bit to how I've been enculturated as
Yeah.
a white person and not been aware of it, and waking up more and more around that. So that's really how it's been emotional for me at times.
Yeah, I have a joke that I used to always say to people that I really didn't think was a joke. I really thought that I was going to be black until the moment I was born. And then I got pissed off at God because I looked down and I said, "What'd you do? You made me a white guy. What happened? I'm supposed to be a black man."
Right.
So when I think about my place in a racist world, I would say, for the most part, I'm one of the least racist people I could ever imagine meeting. And yet, I took this Harvard test, and the Harvard test has different categories. It talks about geographic locations of people, finances, color of skin. And I took the color of skin because it was a big situation. And I was shocked to see what came. What came back is I have a high propensity to want to feel more comfortable with white people than I do with people of color. And I was so surprised.
Yeah.
But there's so many different associations that we have with white being good and black being bad that we've just grown up with. You know,
Yeah.
for God's sake, it's called the White House.
Right.
Santa
Black
Claus
cat.
is white.
Right.
We're going through a period of darkness where we were searching for the light. All there's so many connotations that we have that are built into to and and it feels like so much of that has to change.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
And I don't even know where we start in some
Yeah.
ways, because it's almost like the next generation is going to have to do it more than our generation, even though we can
Yeah.
try.
Right. Yeah. Well, and to your point, I grew up in a very devout Catholic family, and I grew up in a very, very white neighborhood. And I had a white Jesus and a white Mary and a
Yeah.
white Joseph. And I would tell you, it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I woke up and was like, wait a minute, Jesus wasn't white. Like, he couldn't have been,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and like that. And that's what I mean. It's like programmed and enculturated, and anything, I know how the brain works. So anything you hear over and over again, you start to believe in. And so, to your point, like black cats, did a black cat cross the road in front of
Right.
you? And Darth Vader, he's black and he's in this black outfit, and all the good people are in these white outfits. And it is kind of interesting that the Ku Klux Klan is in white, which
Yeah.
is very
Interesting. I
interesting.
hadn't thought about that. But in the cowboy movies, all the good guys have white hats on. Bad
Yes,
guys have, but right.
yes.
I remember I was born Jewish, and I was one day away from being ordained a rabbi, but then I
Mhm.
had a change of faith and a
Yeah,
change of belief, and I went into a yoga community where I believed in Jesus, not quite in the way the church believes in Jesus, but in
right.
a more. And I led a pilgrimage because I had been in Israel. I led a pilgrimage of my brothers and sisters to Israel, and we went to the Catholic shrines. And I remember going to Bethlehem, and the Church of Nativity has stained glass windows of Jesus in every color and every race around. The first time I saw it, I said, "Well, no, no, that's not possible. He can't be. He can't be black. He can't be Indian. He can't be Chinese. He can't be." And then I said, "Really? Like, where the heck? Like, this is this open guy that you think you are? Of course he is, and of course every race would feel that he was theirs, right? If they believed in him, right?"
Right. Yeah.
Let's change uh, tempo a little bit. Um, I want to go to a little bit of a lightning round. Just ask you some quick questions, and you can take your time with it. You can answer however you want to answer. Are you a dog person or a cat? And it's going to. I know you have both.
They
So
do know the ant both for very different reasons. Like, I love my dogs to hike with and do all that with, and I love my cats because I have a cat I think I need to get a restraining order against, because she's so attached to me. She typically follows me everywhere. I'm kind of surprised she's not in here now, but I just adore them both for different reasons. And
love.
they're just clowns, all of them, and
I
they're all,
love that.
yeah.
How about, are you a coffee person or a tea person?
I both. Again, I drink tea first thing in the morning, and I always, coffee's like a little bit of a treat for me. Like, I don't get black coffee, which is interesting, but I like it. It's more like a treat, so I have to have cream and sugar in it, or oat milk and
I got
sugar
you.
in it. So yeah.
Would you say you're somebody that is in the box or out of the box?
Hmm. Gosh, it's funny. I'm both. I would tell you, I grew up trying to fit in the box, and yet I also would say I'm out of the box in many ways. And when I think about, like, I would say, to look at me, most people would be like, "Oh, she's in the box," but my thoughts are very different than most. Like, at times even within my own family, I'm definitely perceived like, well, she has different beliefs. But and even how I would say I do tapping,
Yeah.
um, some people might be like, wow, that's a really interesting way she does it. So I would say real more I'm out of the box, but I do have in the box parts of me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but tell me one in the box part of you, because I love that you said you're both. And I
Mhm.
love that you said all my life I've sort of been trying to get back into the box. But a person that's in the box never tries to get back in the box. They're just in the box.
Yeah, more. God, if I said that, that's funny. That's must have been like a Freudian slip. More. I grew up very much having to be in the box, and I was a really chatty kid, so I always ended up down in the principal's office. Not because I was a bad kid, but because I would question them and like, well, like if Jesus died on the cross to save us from sin, what happened to all the people that died before he was here? And they'd be like, go to the principal's office. So I had independent thought, but after a while, I was so enculturated to sort of reject that I started to be where I would say I was in the boxes. I had to really be the good girl so that I wouldn't be punished. You know, I wanted to be appropriate. And I would say when I would be in the box, it was more to fit in, to
Gotcha.
survive.
So, what happens to someone who is an out of the box person that is told they have to be in the box and to survive?
I think it's super challenging. I think we, on a sense, lose a, like, I don't want to say lose a part of ourselves, but we have to push aside a part of ourselves, um, and not like, I would say we sort of clamp down on ourselves emotionally, like our expression of thought. We might bite our tongue more. We might not say something when it might be good to say something. And I really think that can impact our health. Um, and I also think someone can be perceived as difficult or challenging or whatever. Um, and I think those are things that can come of that.
Why do you think it's so important for people to put us in the box?
Well, programming is what popped in my head. I think we live in a very, what I'm going to call ego-based culture. It's all about this is what makes you successful. This is what success looks like. And there's certain paradigms that are put out there. And if you don't question those, even that's how racism was
Yeah.
born. They look different. And you hear that enough and the brain starts to believe it. So I think that's why, in order to survive that in the EFT world, we would say to be rejected by your tribe feels like death
Hmm.
in the mind of a child. So a child will sell their soul to
Wow.
fit into their tribe so that they're not rejected. And then, like on its most extreme, feel like, well, how am I going to make it on my own? So we're enculturated to push ourselves to fit in.
I think you're so lucid in the way you're explaining it, and I so appreciate it. And yet, if you stand back from that whole story a little bit and you ask yourself as an independent observer, why would I want to fit into a tribe that if I think differently, they'll ostracize me and throw me out and not treat me well? Why would I want to be that person? And yet, we're talking about racism. We're talking about, the way men treat women. We're talking about cultures. We're talking about, ways that we grow up. It's so influences us from the time we're little to you can't think for yourself, because if you think for yourself, people won't like you. So you have to be part of a group that won't like you for who you are. They like you only for who they want you to be. Does that make sense? How is that culture sustainable, though?
Well, I think we're kind of seeing the unraveling
Yeah.
of all that's happening around the world, and particularly here in the United States. Every empire falls, and at some point, it's like, because to me, if it's based in what we call ego consciousness, and that's what I would think is, I just have the belief that we're born, we come in, and we're so filled with light, love, and all that, but we get enculturated to push that away. So we get enculturated to follow the ego-based paradigm all of us see over and over again. There's fortunate people that are like, they don't buy into that. Like I have a sister who was like, oh my God, you believed everything they told you in Catholicism? And I said, eventually I was programmed enough that I did. And she didn't. She always knew a lot of it was like, she's like, how's that even possible? I was just, for me, eventually I was more susceptible, I think.
Yeah.
And I just got it thrown at me enough. And then I woke up. It's like waking up from the nightmare. I was like, wait, why did I ever believe that was it? And what I would say is, I just think we all still, as a human being, set aside from our spiritual component, because we are in a body, still here on planet Earth, melding humanity and spirituality. We still all have a kid inside of us
Yeah.
that is still wounded and joyful and all that. And that's the part of us that's like, I got to fit in, or this isn't going to go well for me. And then when we heal that, then we're like, I don't need to fit in. And if they don't like me, that's fine. And we become okay with that.
Yeah.
It's not so threatening to us.
Yeah. I have so much I want to ask you. What do you think happens? Because I know I've gone through that. And I'm old enough now. I'm maybe not wise enough to care, but it like doesn't like what I think of me is so much more important than what you think of me. And what I think of myself when I sell my soul out to be liked by somebody else is not very high. Even if you think I'm the greatest person in the world, I still have to get past the veneer that I'm putting on of myself, which isn't me.
Right.
Why do you think we do that, and what do you think it is that makes us shift back?
Well, again, I would say we're really enculturated to do that. You hear, and the brain hears something enough, and then it starts to believe it. So
Gotcha.
I think in order, in our family of origin, our original tribe, if there's threats, children are brilliant. They're just brilliant, and they figure out how to survive circumstances without, especially in circumstances where maybe the adults are less than functioning at their best.
Yeah.
They will figure out ways to survive. And then through that survival, which to me is very much based in the human part of us, they'll just do whatever it takes to survive that. And then, like, I could speak for myself. I was just, all of a sudden I went to the principal's office enough. I'm like, this isn't going so well for me. I'm getting welts beaten in my hand. I'm getting my ear twisted. So if I don't want to get so punished all the time, I better figure out a way to, because my parents were so enculturated too, they weren't going to help me.
Yeah.
Just because of what they believe. So I had to figure out a way to fit in. And then when I started to wake up, I was like, oh my God, that's like crazy. Like that actually was abusive. And I don't really know what it took for me to wake up. I knew I bought my first self-help book when I was 16. So I think that inner spirit, the authentic self, was always kind of like, hey, there's more to life than this. There's more to life than this. And I think I kept coming back to that, and I'd go away and come back. And then eventually I think I had sort of woken up enough from the BS that I was fed to be like, there's another world out there that I want to tap back into. And I just think that timeline is different for everyone. And some people get it earlier life. Some people never get it in this lifetime. And then some, we all are on our own unique journey.
Thank you for all that. I have so many things that we could talk about, but I want to stay true to time because we're slipping away a little bit. In a world where both of these things are really important, which one's more important for you right now, or which one do you think is more important for the world right now? Do you think it's more important for you to have a platform for you to be able to speak your truth and be heard? Or do you believe it's more important to create a platform for other people to speak their truth and you to be able to listen to it?
Interesting. Here I go again. I would definitely say the latter is more true, and yet I do think if we have stuff that we've gained some wisdom on that we can offer out, teach, put out there, and let people accept or reject it. That's theirs. But more the way I would say this, I think it's more important to create a platform where people can learn to accept themselves exactly as they are and learn to love themselves exactly as they are, because we've all learned to go to judgment so profoundly in ourselves. And that's what I seek to do, is to create a space for people to start to maybe see something a little like, oh my God, I'm like, it's okay that I'm human and I have flaws. I think self-acceptance and self-love, to create that platform, is huge.
Yeah. One of the beautiful things that I'm finding out about having this magic room called the Zoom room is how remarkable it is when people feel they can be themselves in this room, when they don't feel like they have to say the right things or give the right answers or rationalize what they believe, and
Yeah.
that they feel loved and accepted for whoever they are. Um, and real things are happening, changes are happening in people, not because I'm changing people or they're changing it, just because the commingling of two souls together who actually love and accept each other um, makes things fall off.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
a great way to say it. That's
it's
beautiful.
really when two people occupy one space, what doesn't belong has to fall away, and what does belong is what's real.
Yeah.
So
Just
it's really interesting to see what's happening. Um, do you feel like you fit into the world, or do you feel like you're different?
I definitely feel like I'm different.
Yeah, I'm shocked in how many people out of the conversations that I've had. I'm going to say 95% of the people that I've asked feel different.
Yeah.
And in light of the conversation that we're having, where everybody's trying to fit in, it's interesting that people that feel different are being sort of invited to fit into a world that they don't fit into, rather than creating a world of different people that they can fit into.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the interesting observations from the experiment that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Uh, do you feel like you operate from your head or your heart?
Okay, here's my answer. Both.
You
I'm
can't go both. I don't want to let you. You got away with both too much.
well, I
You have to choose one.
heart now. Head before, heart now.
What changed?
I would say, I'm going to say tapping came in and I was able to clear out a lot of the programming. And then it gave me, this is how I look at tapping. It cleared out the muck that got programmed into me and opened me up to my own heart
Love it.
and my own learning to accept and love myself more.
Do you consider yourself a leader or a follower? Can't say both.
Uh, More of a leader.
So when you look at the world that we're living in today, and you look at the leadership that we've put into place, and I'm not trying to make a political statement of being pro-Trump or anti-Trump.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it exists on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at the leaders that we have, whether you're pro-Trump and you see things that he's done that have been really good for the country and see some things that he's done that have been really bad for the country, I don't see many people standing up in that camp and saying, gosh, this has been really good, but this hasn't been so good. And in
You know,
the Democratic camp, just give me 1 minute. In the
yes.
Democratic camp, it's the same way. I don't see anybody saying, boy, these are the things he's done really good. What he did here was fabulous. But we can't let him just continue to do these other things. But they don't give the dog a bone.
Mhm.
They just beat and beat. Every time he comes around a corner, they hit him with a 2x4.
Yeah.
And so where is real leadership right now if the people that we've put in the place of leadership don't have the strength of character to stand up to their silo and say, we have to change this? We can't just vote in mass. We have to vote for what's right in both camps.
I agree with you.
And so in the leadership of your own person, Do you have the strength to look at some of the things you're not doing well and call yourself out on them?
I would say I absolutely do. And in the work I do, I very often share my own stories of this is where I messed up. And I think that's important
Yeah.
to bring humanity into it. I mean, do I see every little thing? No, my husband's great at pointing stuff out to me, and which is good, which a spouse I think can be for. And I would say though, as a whole, I I definitely can see a lot of ways where I was like, ooh, yeah, I probably could have done better there. I would say I actually like that about myself.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
You mentioned one thing when when you're questioning of the black person that you reached out to. What would be one significant thing that you now are re-looking at that you thought you were doing right that maybe you're not doing as right as you thought?
I think what I was doing is I'm going to use the term that I've heard. I was really realistically coming from a place of white privilege that I
Yeah.
didn't understand.
But I'm not
And
talking about that instance. We already
yeah,
know that instance. You already
okay,
explained that. I'm
yeah,
talking about slide that one out of the way.
okay.
What's something in your life that you thought all along you might have been doing right, but you realized because you have this ability to see, to stand up against the momentum of your own life as a leader, just like the Republicans and Democrats are not doing,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
and
God, that's
see something that you're doing that you could notice right now, maybe for even the first time.
God, that's a really good question. I mean, I don't know if I'm drawing a blank because I don't want to see something, or more of uh, feeling like just in my own transparency. Well, I could go to this parenting.
Okay.
I totally see things
Yeah.
in hindsight that I definitely would say I let fear make decisions for me.
So
And
how is that same fear affecting you today? Because I don't want to go past tense.
yeah,
I want to go present tense.
I would say I can see things in my life present day at times where I was like, whoa, I just let fear make that choice for me. And then I would say I'm far more aware of it now than I used to be. There are times with my husband, he'll say something and I'll be like, oh yeah, sure. And then I'm like, wait, why did I say that? Like, that's not what I want.
Right.
That's not what I want. I don't want
Right.
it that way. And I might default because that's what I was taught and learned to do. And then I'm like, no, 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 no. And I have to go back and do a do over and
I,
say, that's not what I want.
I so appreciate you letting me ask you that because it's the first time in these conversations I have. But I realize how easy it is to see our political leaders and say, yeah, they should really stand up and find the good and find the things that go against their format. But we in our own lives don't do that either. And
Hmm.
it's so easy to gloss over it and say, well, I don't know why I can't find something because, and I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what, right? But there has to be things. And if we don't go against our own momentum, how much of a leader are we really?
Oh, absolutely. Makes sense. And I think the system in our country in that way in the government does not promote that.
Yeah,
So it's more fearful
yeah,
for them to be able to go, wow, I really kind of did that wrong. And that way I would say it, and this isn't a law of attraction thing, it attracts people who have a harder time owning maybe, I probably could have done that better. As a
yeah.
whole, I think that's really true in our political system in the United
Yeah,
States.
I'm trying to get out of politics. I'm trying to use the political model that we all
Yeah,
can see to go into a personal model that we don't want to see.
yeah,
And so it's interesting to me, and I love you for it, and I really respect you for taking it back to political because it's so hard to look at personal.
yeah, yeah,
And I just want to salute you for that and for and to see that and just because that's a revelation that I just saw here.
yeah.
Um, do you think people are more alike than they are different, or that they're more different than they are similar?
Oh, way more alike,
Way more alike.
way more.
And even in that question, so many people say that. And yet it seems like we spend our life looking at the differences that exist between people.
I totally agree.
Why do you think we do that? Why
I,
do you do that?
oh, I abso-freaking-lutely. I can.
So let's make it personal because of your love to stay personal.
Yeah.
Why do you do that when you know we're more similar than we are different?
I would literally tell you, I've been programmed. This isn't a scapegoat thing. I was programmed to be like, okay, what's wrong here? What's not working? What's wrong with that person? What's, looking for the shoe to drop, looking for that has been something that I have so had to consistently pay attention to.
How long ago were you programmed to do that?
Early childhood. Early
When,
childhood.
like, and this isn't coaching, this is just love.
Yeah.
When would now be a good time to just stand up to that programming and change it?
Now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm not meaning to teach. I'm just like, what happens when we have conversations and we start to ask hard questions and we see things, we can either just go back to our history and say, well, this is why we do it because it's been programmed in us. Or we can say, hold it, that's been programmed in us. And we have a choice right this minute to make that choice to get out of this moment. And we can do that because there's grace, there's blessing. We live in a benevolent world which is wanting to help us. We can tap our way, we can pray our way, we can do whatever it is that we do. That we no longer have to take those answers, but the longer we continue to repeat those answers over and over again, I do it, you do it, we all do it. Um, they just become more fixed in our consciousness.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you think the world is trying to tell us something with all that's happening to us right now?
Absolutely.
What do you think it's trying to say?
Well, I would even say more specifically Mother Earth.
Okay. All
Let's
right.
go with what we call it, Mother Earth. Yeah, that we're out of homeostasis, that the planet's out of homeostasis, and we're a direct link to the planet, and when the planet's out of homeostasis, it's a reflection of us being out of homeostasis. And I get there's a higher realm here, no question, where it's all like love and perfect and we don't have to do those things. I truly believe that. My belief, which I could say it's well entrenched, is we've just drifted far from that. And now I think all this is happening to help us. It's a wake-up call to wake up back to the truth of our being and to our own homeostasis.
So I love that. Do you think it also has a personal message for you? All the stuff that's going on?
Oh, always. I would say in this way, from what I would consider to be my soul contract, whatever I came here to learn in
And
human form,
so what do you think it's trying to tell you personally right now, all the things that are going on?
to get myself back, continue to be in homeostasis, to open up more to that authentic self within me, the place that I originally came from,
So the
that
same message it's telling the world is a personalized message for you.
absolutely. Yeah.
Fabulous. If you had 1 minute to take everything that you know and not teach people, but just offer to people something that could help them realign the momentum, to become leaders in their own life, to become leaders in the world that we live in, to stand up against the momentum of just our habits, our patterns, our beliefs, our things. What would you say to people?
I would literally say, whatever you feel, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with anything you feel. There's nothing wrong with any emotion. There are emotions. We came installed with this amazing palette of emotions that were meant to be felt. And anytime we try to tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel that way, that locks down on us. And you really are perfect. And even in what appears to be your flaws and fallible, you're perfectly imperfect as a human being.
Love it. Marti, is this the type of stuff you talk about in your new book that's coming out?
Oh, well, yeah, I talk a lot about emotions, forbidden emotions, and allowing ourselves to feel more fully, because I do think we as a culture have learned to reject them. in a lot of ways and make them forbidden. And I think through our emotions is how we reconnect to what I would call our authentic self. It's, yeah.
And what's that book called, and how can people get it?
Oh, it's called Forbidden Emotions, The Key to
Okay.
Healing. It's on Amazon. You can get it through Target and through Walmart.
Wow, fabulous. Forbidden Emotions. I said something, so I didn't hear the subtitle.
Oh,
What is it?
The Key to Healing.
The Key to Healing. Okay.
Yeah,
And if
thanks.
people have become intoxicated with you through your conversation and want to know more about you, how would they get in touch with you? And you'll send me all your links, but what would,
Absolutely.
how would they, what's the best place for them to reach you at?
My website's my name, Marti, Marti, Murphy, Murphy.com, and there's a way to contact me through that.
Fabulous.
Yeah, very
Uh,
sweet.
Absolutely. My honor. I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us.
It's delightful.
What a pleasure to get to know you. I want to thank you for letting me push you a little bit,
Absolutely.
because what happened in this conversation was something that I guess I felt an openness to go to places because I've never asked some of those questions before. And I saw something in our conversation that I'm going to go back and listen to, because I think there's some keys there to unlock some things for myself as well.
Yeah.
Um, for those of you who are listening and have listened in, this is another conversation with another stranger, and look how beautiful it went. Look how look how kind people are. Look how, even in my pushing Marty, she didn't push back. She just went with it. She, I pushed her a little bit because there were certain things that she's, you can see her nodding. Yes, he did, and that wasn't my intention to push her out of anything other than to just understand better what was going on. I wasn't trying to teach. I wasn't trying to show. I was just trying to understand. And I think when you have the intention to just love somebody and help understand them and understand for yourself and them, not that even they understand themselves any better, but that you want to understand what they believe. So you ask questions about it because you find things that don't resonate in your perception of how they've come across, that there's something beautiful that happens. And so I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank you. If you like this conversation, obviously, please share it with your friends, or don't. You don't have to. This will grow in its own way, and if it doesn't grow in its own way, it's also fine that way too. I think the most value I am getting in this is that when I invite somebody into this magic room and I meet somebody for the first time that I've never met before, and we experience each other, none of the things that I used to believe are real. Strangers are not somebody you don't talk to. Strangers are somebody you can talk to. It doesn't take a certain amount of time for people to feel comfortable and open up to you. Look how quickly it happens in every single conversation here. It's a fallacy to think that if people think differently than us, they're wrong, or they're not good, or they're different than us. They're not. They're all the same. And the perspectives often give us insights. And so I want to invite you to, why not take a risk now? Why not find somebody you don't know and invite them to have a conversation? The person that inspired me to do this was on a mission to have 500 lunches with 500 strangers.
Wow.
And I have them on my podcast, the Mosaic podcast. It's on my YouTube channel also. But what a beautiful idea. And he inspired me to do it. I didn't even know him. I just had heard the idea, and I said, I want to do something like that. And I'm just going to have 50 conversations with 50 strangers, which will grow to more because I've already reached my 50 and I don't want to stop. Take the time to get to know somebody you don't know.
Mm.
Maybe even take the time to spend a little more time getting to know somebody you do know. You might just find they're not who you think they are.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for coming. Marty, is there anything you want to say walking out now before we close?
Yeah, actually, to your point about leadership, and it really is a great point that we sort of want leaders to be able to see their own stuff, but can we see our own all the time? And
Yeah.
it's a really fair question.
Yeah.
And I think it can help depolarize
Yeah.
us in a huge way.
Well, and even in a more sort of metaphysical way, we elect leaders who are like us to lead. And so if we can't see our stuff, we elect leaders who purposely can't see their stuff so that we feel okay about who we are.
Right.
And then we blame them for not seeing themselves rather than taking a look at ourselves and saying, when we change ourselves, we will no longer have those people be our leaders because it won't resonate with us anymore.
Mhm.
We won't choose those people because they're not in sync with us. We'll choose people that are more in sync with us.
Yeah.
Okay, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you. It was really
You'll
enjoyable.
send me your links. You'll send me a photo, a headshot of yourself, please, so
Absolutely.
I can get this posted.
Yeah.
And again, thank you, folks. Until the next conversation, don't be a stranger. Take care. Ciao.
Bye.